All right, let's look specifically now at a lot of the questions in this research that focused on some of the challenges. Let's understand the barriers, right? So we
Yep.
can get those barriers out of the way so we really can get this strong pipeline.
Yep. So we gave folks a list of a whole bunch of challenges, some that were new this year, that are more recent, and asked them to choose any or all that apply to them as really being a severe challenge. And number one, 65% identified a lack of trust in government. We've also got issues about talent, engaging top talent, attracting top talent. Um, Evolving public perceptions and trust issues, budgeting, strong leadership, pipeline development, funding issues, generational differences in values, work style, and priorities, and maintaining optimal levels of employment. All significant challenges. There are more when you look at the data, but this is the top of the list. So it's not an easy job right now. Folks have a lot of things that they're trying to deal with.
Yeah, two things. Susan, you mentioned this early on. We've had additional people that have joined us as well a little bit later that we'll let you know at the end of this how you can get all the rest of this data
Hmm.
uh, because there's a lot of data, right?
There's a
So
lot.
yeah, a lot more, and we'll share with you at the end of the webinar how you can go ahead and get that data. But what I really want to point out is these top four
Mhm.
are trust in people, trust in people, trust in people, trust in people. And then the fifth one is money.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
that's not atypical for other industries as well, as that our top challenges are oftentimes are people and money.
Yep.
However, in this particular industry at this particular time, and it also reflects very similarly to what we saw last year, which trust, or 2 years ago, trust was also the top challenge 2 years ago as well. But like you said, now, the people, it's rising much more toward the surface now. And
Yeah.
so we're feeling that hinge throughout the organization at many different positions. And of course, as we know, in the leadership pipeline as well. So I don't think it's just exclusively pipeline at this point that local governments are really feeling this pinch. It is, engaging,
Yep.
retaining that top talent.
Yep. For sure.
Big, big challenge.
Big challenge. Um, these are challenges. We did the same thing with this question, but it's about challenges to leadership pipeline development. And I thought this was really interesting. 72% of our respondents this year said one of their biggest challenges is having the time to invest in leadership development, significantly more than selected challenges with budgets or whether they have candidates or whether the process is formal or any of these kinds of things. There's a real, and I think it probably speaks to what you were just talking about. When there's a lot of challenges besides leadership pipeline development, finding
Mhm.
the time to invest in that becomes harder. So we know
It
it's not an
does.
easy job.
It does. And we're busy, busy, busy. I mean, we know that nobody on the call would deny that we're extraordinarily busy and maybe busier today than we used to be. When I saw this number, I was floored. I was really floored that this was really identified as, the top challenge here in specifically developing the pipeline.
Mhm.
Now, I was floored, and yet I get it because I see our clients and how extraordinarily busy, 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 busy everyone is. What concerns me and where we need as leaders of organizations to pause and really take this in, it reminds me of a phrase that happens in the coaching world. And Susan, I've done executive coaching for many years.
Many years.
And there's a little saying with coaching is, if your executive says, I'm too busy for coaching, it's like, okay, then it's time for coaching, right? And that's what made me think about this. The other thought that I had about time is, if we don't make this a priority, if we don't make the time to be very intentional about developing a healthy pipeline of ready now leaders, then every time we need to fill a leadership position, we're going to be in a crisis. And from my own experience, hiring in a crisis is never a good thing because then we are just desperate to get a butt in a seat, so to speak, and not necessarily the right person in the right position. And that desperation causes us to make poor choices.
Sure.
And when we do a bad hire, especially in a leadership role, boy, is that something that comes back to bite us
Yeah.
again and again and again.
And this is a universal problem. If you're wondering how the segments broke out upon this, all of them were 72% selecting that. That was the highest selected item across all segments. So it's not just a problem that the challengers are having. It goes further than that.
Yep.
And then to your point, what happens if we don't have a pipeline of well-developed, ready now leadership candidates? Our respondents said, um, biggest challenges: meet changing needs and demands of our constituents, continue to provide the same level or higher level services to them, and retain or attract top talent. So
Yep.
not just are we doing the job that we need to be doing, but do we have the staff to do that job?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yep. It's going to hurt the services. Again, just as we said at the top of the webinar,
Mm-hmm.
it's going to hurt the level of services that we're able to provide so beautifully.
So we did ask these respondents, and again, these are folks working in local government. What do you think candidates prioritize when they're looking at job opportunities? And most of them, 69%, think that their candidates are looking for competitive wages, 49% a positive work culture, and 32% a competitive benefits package. So in the eyes of these leaders, wages and then work culture are the priorities of the candidates that they are seeing.
Right. And just quick comment on this. We can only do so much in this industry with competitive wages,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's only so much we can do with that. What we can affect is that second one, that
Culture.
positive work culture. That's something that we can absolutely control.
Yep. And it makes a big difference. So speaking to that, it's interesting. 72% of respondents in the study say that they offer competitive benefits as part of attracting leadership candidates that are a good fit. So it's interesting for me, go back to that previous slide really quickly,
Mhm.
that there's such a priority on doing that when only 32% said that competitive benefits package is really something that folks are focused on. Now, again, wages are hard to address in this
Sure,
situation, but work
sure.
culture isn't.
Right.
And if you go back to the next slide, in terms of what people are doing to attract candidates, we have a strong organizational culture, only 34%. So I do think there's an opportunity here to
Yeah.
reconcile what they know candidates want with where they're putting their efforts and where it can make change. And culture is certainly one of those things.
Absolutely. And when I look at this, the top five here, and again, the rest of the data you'll be able to see in the executive summary. But what, just quick pointing out here is that in this top five, the embracing technology, offering remote work options, those are really part of the competitive benefits, right?
Yep.
So it really is about benefits. What's our brand in the
Yep.
community, right? And how are we able to influence that brand
Yep.
and our culture, which is internal?
Yeah, for sure. There are levers that can be pulled.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So our takeaways in this section are really fourfold. So number one, the erosion of public trust and talent retention are really the top challenges, which really are demanding a workplace culture that can provide that competitive advantage.
Mhm.
So people, again, wages aren't going to be that different, right? Municipality to municipality, but the workplace culture can be very different
Very different indeed.
from place to place. So that provides the competitive advantage for people. And the really cool thing for our local govs is the workplace culture it does not cost money, or direct costs, should I say, like benefits and wages do. Obviously, there'll be an investment in time and quite possibly money, but nowhere near the line item like wages and benefits are. So, that's so hopeful for
Yeah,
me. And I'm sure those of the people on the call as well.
the
Um,
return on investment is high for improving the culture, for sure.
Yes. Yes. So time and budget constraints are the biggest barriers that we're seeing, which it limits the investment in leadership development and succession planning. And I know succession planning makes a lot of our local government leaders nervous. And I think it's because there was that old belief that succession planning meant, you picked your chosen person and you groomed and prepared that one individual for that job, and then it no longer became competitive for anybody else in the organization. Well, maybe that's how things used to be done. But really, succession planning is recognizing the potential leadership path for those people in your organization who do have a desire and a skill set to move up into leadership positions, and then invest that time and money in, a whole bunch of people so that you're developing a whole bunch of people to have those, and now you're helping them to become competitive. You're not guaranteeing a job, you're helping them all to become competitive. And it makes me think about, I remember seeing a little animated cartoon one time between two individuals, and the one was, the little bubble was CFO and the other one was CEO. And we certainly can say, director of finance or CFO, and, city or county manager, right? Um, and the CFO had said, well, what if we invest in our people and they leave the organization? And then the CEO said, well, what if we don't and they stay?
And they stay, that's right.
Right? And
That's
then
not what you want either.
no, no, absolutely not. Then we have just those empty or unproductive shells.
Mhm.
Unclear succession strategies and inadequate mentorship threaten organizational continuity and leadership effectiveness. And finally, organizations are relying on competitive benefits to attract their leaders. That may not be the best singular strategy out
Yeah,
there.
I think it's part of the puzzle, but I think we've seen a lot of data with employees, younger employees these days, culture is incredibly important to them. Certainly much more than it was in the 80s when I was first in the job market. It's really important. So I think you can kind of kill a couple of birds with one stone with this, with focusing a little more on your culture.
Thank you for joining us for today's episode of Leadership Blueprint. This wraps up today's conversation, but the journey doesn't end here. We've put together an executive summary with key insights to help you put these ideas into action. You can download the summary at governmentleadershipsolutions.com. We're just getting started, and we can't wait to have you join us for future episodes. Until then, keep leading with love.